Welcome to Undiet Your Coaching Practice podcast. I'm Stephanie Dozier, clinical nutritionist, certified intuitive eating counselor, and creator of the Going to Beyond the Food method. And after a 25-year dieting career, I decided to say hell no to diet culture and undiet my life, which also included my coaching practice. I'm on a mission to help all coaches undiet not only their life, but their coaching business. If you want to throw down diet culture, you're in the right place. Ready, sisters? Let's do this. Hello, my dear colleagues. Welcome back. How you doing? I hope you're doing well. I wanted to quickly share with you something I did this weekend that is not, quote, ordinary, that I think could benefit you. I plan my whole year of 2022. But differently than what you hear from the average business coach, I actually plan my personal life first. I laid out all my vacation for the year, my travel plan, my family activities, and then I flipped and I looked at my business. How can I plan my business to support the personal life that I want to live in 2022? And I'm encouraging you to do the same. First of all, start thinking about what you want to live, the dreams you want to achieve in 2022 personally, and then think about how your business can support that. Which is going to lead me into our guest today, Lauren Elizabeth. Lauren is somebody that I met through a common friend, Kelly Deals, and she's a radical coach and a feminist business mentor, and she helps feminist coaches, healer, and creative to build and grow businesses that are aligned with their unique brilliance and vision. And she's going to come and teach us today about the concept of building a feminist business. First of all, what does it mean? And what are the base principles for us to build a feminist business? And as I'm saying this, I want you to pay attention to the word feminist and how it lands with you. I know that there is a number of women who resist that word. And if that's you, I want to speak to you personally. I want you to feel this resistance that you have to the word feminist and be curious. Instead of resisting and not inquire and not listen, I want you to become curious. It's the same principle that we teach in intuitive eating, right? Instead of judging, become curious, right? So I want you to take this resistance that you're feeling, open yourself up with curiosity to the message that Lauren has to teach today. Lauren is also a guest expert teacher in the next cohort for our non-diet mentorship program. She'll come and teach to our student about the concept, and we'll talk about it a little bit in the interview, of body of work. Body of work is how you take your teaching, your approach to what you do, whatever you work on, that you are a health professional in mental health, a body image coach, an intuitive eating coach, is how you take what you do and customize it to align with your personal value and also fit your zone of genius so it can meet your ideal client and attract your ideal clients. So this concept of body of work is what makes your business sustainable. It's what makes your business stand out. And I know for me, that's what has made me successful up to now in all of my business, is how my message, my content is unique. It's my own spin on things. And I want to teach that to my students. So Lauren is coming over in the next cohort. I think it's on January 22nd, and teaching about that. But she's such a brilliant woman. I wanted for all of you, even though you may not be in the next cohort of the non-diet mentorship, to meet her and understand her message, because I think all of us needs a Lauren in our life. And I just wanted to mention also, I know this is kind of last minute, but we do have an information session for the non-diet mentorship program overall. And that's happening on October the 21st, 2021. Depending when you're listening to this, you may be able to come live. So the link will be in the show notes. To register, it's totally free. And what's very unique about our information session is, although I host the beginning of it, all the questions that people attending have are all answered by students. My students are so in love with the program that they're volunteering their time to come and answer people inquiring about the program, their answer to their question. So there'll be a bunch of panelists, my current student, in the information session to answer all of your question. So I've been talking a lot. So I'm going to stop talking now, and we're going to move over to the interview with Lauren on how to build a feminist business. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm real excited to be here today.
I'm excited to have you. You're one of my discovery on the world of social media over the last 6 to 9 months. And I avidly consume your content. So I thought, let's bring her on here. And she's also going to be a guest teacher in the next cohort of our mentorship program. But today I just want to get the basic in place. What the heck is a feminist business?
Well, first, I just want to say that I am so grateful to hear that you consume my content. I love creating content. It's something that keeps me really inspired in my work. And I always wanted to be a writer. And I was always told that writers don't make money. And so I'm just like, we're going to make some money with the words that I have to share. So thank you for sharing that. And yeah, what is a feminist business? First, I want to name that there are lots of different kinds of feminism. And so the answer to this question is going to be different depending on who you talk to. But my definition of feminism, before I get into what a feminist business is, feminism is a political ideology or a sort of set of personal principles that aims to create a world and a culture where all people can thrive, regardless of their gender, their sexual orientation, their race, physical ability or disability, their age, right? Like there's so many different identity markers. And in our current system, those identity markers are directly correlated to people's ability to gain access to freedom, to joy, to pleasure, to wealth. And my version of feminism is working to create a world where all of us, regardless of all of those identity markers, or maybe with those, we get to own our full selves and still make the money, have a pleasurable life, have a successful business, and ultimately feel safe in the world and feel like we're allowed to be our full selves. And then to bring the business into that, right? Business, I see business as a form of economic exchange, right? I'm going to provide a service or a skill set or hold a container, and I'm going to be compensated for that. And to make it feminist, I want all parties involved to thrive, right? I think, unfortunately, business in a hyper-capitalist society often like it leans or it's weighed on one side, right? One party is typically benefiting over the other, right? We look at planned obsolescence. We look at sort of sleazy marketing tactics. We look at products that have been like hyped up and aren't quite as good as everyone says they are. And someone ends up feeling like they got the short end of the stick. My goal with a feminist business is for my clients to thrive as much as I'm thriving. It's for my audience to feel like they don't have to pay me the big bucks to learn from me, although I definitely know that I deserve to be compensated for my work. I want to create an awareness around business that it doesn't have to be one-sided. It doesn't have to be this, like sleazy exchange. It can be mutually beneficial. And, we already mentioned in our little chat prior to this about Kelly Deals
Yes.
and her work as a feminist marketer. And Kelly Deals talks about rising together. And I really do believe that when my clients thrive, I thrive. When my audience is thriving, I thrive. And I really just want to normalize that in the business space. And I think for a long time, especially in the coaching and personal development field, we've seen these sort of celebrity coaches rise. And so many of the people they're serving are just left, unfortunately, with like a lot of debt and a lot of like not really having a great path forward, even though they've invested. And so that's my long answer. Like feminist business is about creating mutually beneficial relationships between the business owner and their audience and their clients so that all of us can rise together.
There's a lot in this. It's a very potent definition that leads to all kinds of questions, if you can allow me.
Yeah, please.
So the first place I go is, are not all business inherently capitalist?
I'm so glad you asked this question. No, I don't think so. So here's the thing. We live in a capitalist system. It's really hard if you're in the system, if you're living in the system, to get outside of it. So I think in a sense, that question can feel like it's kind of hard to say yes or no.
There's no black and white answer.
Sure, exactly. And at the same time, capitalism is a system that was put in place to manage people, to manage money, to hoard wealth in certain spaces. And it didn't always exist, right? Capitalism wasn't always the dominant system. And business, commerce, economic exchange, people have been exchanging goods and services since humans have been around. And so I think, one of the, at least the way that I understand, and I want to say, sometimes people will try to romanticize capitalism a little bit about it being about a free market. And I think that like maybe in the definition of capitalism, it's about free market, but the way that we see it playing out in the real world, it's highly extractive. It relies entirely on a sort of unequal distribution of labor and profit. And it ultimately doesn't care about the well-being of the people on the planet, right? We're seeing that everywhere. We're seeing what happens when capitalism is allowed to run wild, right? I don't want to be too dark here, but our oceans are suffering. Our rainforests are being, cut down, and that's impacting. We talk about the rainforests in the Amazon being the lungs of the earth, and we're just like cutting them down because we want to have more beef. And right, because there's money in beef. And, I could go on and on about this sort of horrific outcomes that we're seeing because there are certain entities that are willing to do whatever it takes to make money. Okay. And so my thought is that business isn't inherently capitalist. Yeah, we have to be really careful because we live in such a capitalist system. Most of us, many of us live in such a capitalist system that it can be hard to sort of separate the two. And I think that we can do business without manipulating people. I think that we can do business without devastating the environment. I think that we can do business without being extractive, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. So let me go to the other side of the coin. So I'll call it our industry. The non-diet approach to health is an infantry, like literally like stage one of what is going to become the predominant way of approaching health in the next 20 years. That's my belief. And we have people that have been harmed by bro marketing, capitalist business, who come to this world and want to help people. And then there's this fear of making money. Well, I shouldn't be making money because that's harming other people. What do you make of that? What's your opinion on that thought?
Well, first, I do want to say I am with you on my vision for the health world being centered around the anti-diet approach. Like, yes, please. I also agree with you wholeheartedly that capitalism and bro marketing and patriarchy are all just, they benefit so much from diet culture. And so I'm with you so much on that. This piece around fearing making money is very interesting. I see this mostly in clients that I have who are women or who have been socialized as women. And there's this story that like money is evil.
Yes.
But isn't it interesting that like the people who are in power all have the money? And so I think that myth that making money makes us evil is exactly that. It's a myth. Okay. I want you to have financial power. I want myself to have financial power. I trust myself with money. I trust myself with power. And the people that I work with, the clients that I work with who are so passionate about creating change in their communities, I trust them with power and I trust them with money. And so I guess, you know, to that thing around fear, it's deep-seated, right? There's a lot of money trauma in our society. And I don't know that I can like solve that trauma or that pain in this interview, but what I want, if someone's going to take this away, you know, a little takeaway is that like money is power, and I would rather you have it and be doing your work to create change than it just be funneling into the pockets of Starbucks and Amazon and Target, even though I occasionally will shop at those places. You know, I think that I would like to see money concentrated in places and with people who share my vision of a world where all of us have access to joy and freedom and love and power.
That's beautiful. And I think that's going to help manage people's brain that tend to go to black and white, right? People hear the word, okay, feminist business means it's not a capitalist business. That means I can't make money. And I cannot, and I need to feel ashamed if I make money because I don't want to be a capitalist. So I think there's that gray space in between, and that's where we need to land.
Yeah, absolutely. The nuance is so important. And I think that, you know, that's another thing that comes from, you know, this kind of like weaves maybe into diet culture a little bit around like food, this binary of things are either good or bad, right? Food, that food is either good or bad. You know, that diet or that exercise is either good or bad. Money is either good or bad.
Yes.
And ultimately, everything that I've learned points to this truth that binaries do not exist. Binaries don't exist, but we haven't been taught to hold the nuance. And so we have to retrain our brains to be willing to hold the both and. Yes, money happens to be concentrated in the hands of people who do harmful stuff in the world. It's true. And also, that doesn't mean that money is the reason for the harm.
That's very good. So let's go into application. Now that we understand kind of the big concept, this is just the beginning of the conversation, obviously, but let's go into, okay, then, so what does that look like in my business? So understanding that most of the people here are health and mental health practitioners, they're offering mainly coaching, teaching services. What would be some of the practices of a feminist business versus, let's say, what you call hyperly focused capitalist type of business? Like, what's the difference, or what does that look like?
Yeah, well, since we're talking about money and the sort of fear of making money, the first thing that I think is important to name around a feminist business is that you are making enough to take care of yourself as a business owner. And I think, again, some nuance here, that in the beginning of a business, sometimes it's like we're not making a big profit. There is definitely a time period where we're just maybe, you know, just breaking even, or maybe even like, you know, working with a loan or getting some support from other folks. That's a real just fact of.
So what you're saying is we're not going to make 8-figure in the first 6 months of our business? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is partially
that's just, I'm just making fun, being sarcastic here, but that's,
I know
you're expressing the truth. Like, you don't make money the first 6 months of your business. Like, it's just normal.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt.
And no, please, I'm so here for the interruptions. And I know that there is a pattern, again, especially with business owners who are concerned with these sort of social issues, especially women tend to way underprice themselves. My first 6-week coaching package that I offered was $265. And like, I remember getting that payment and thinking like, oh, I'm going to make it. Like, this is awesome. And I was very young at the time. I was like in my mid to early 20s. And I remember just thinking like, oh, this is great. If I could just book 20 of these a month, I'll make it. So the first thing that we have to do as feminist business owners is make sure that we are covering all of our bases. And so one of the things that I ask my clients to do is to figure out, what's your thrive number? What is the number? What is the amount of money that you would want to make? And it just, all of your financial concern would just go out the window. Like, what's that juicy, exciting, pleasurable number where all of your bills are paid? You can put money in savings. You can go on vacation whenever you want. What's that number? And then I say like, okay, great. That's what we're working towards. And what is your survive number, right? What is the very minimum that you need to be bringing in every month to pay your rent, to pay your health insurance, to pay your taxes, right? What is that base number? And that is the bare minimum, right? It's not like, oh, like I'll scrape by on a little bit. Like, no, your rent has to be paid. You can't be a business owner if you're worried about having a roof over your head. Or maybe you can be, but like, is that really the place that we want to be serving from?
Yeah.
So step one, or maybe not step one, I don't really believe that it's like a linear process, but one of the things that I really encourage my clients to do is look at your finances. You got to do the math, or hire someone to help you do the math, because we have to be making enough money so that we can actually create something sustainable. The next thing that I think, and I kind of take this for granted, but I think it's really important to say, is we have to be building businesses that allow for joy and pleasure. Like, we have to be building businesses that allow us to be who we are and to feel good about it, especially for the coaches and for the healers and for the folks who are like, doing it maybe largely on their own. Maybe they have a small team, but especially for those of us who don't have a massive team behind us, it's so important that like every piece of our business allows us to be who we are. And it's like not easy to be who we are. We've been told our whole lives that like who we are isn't okay. We have to change, and we have to, lose weight, or we have to like buy that next makeup thing. And I love a little bit of makeup, but like, there's so much pressure to change who we are. And I think that one of the things that I work with my clients is getting to know and owning their zone of brilliance.
Oh, I love that.
What is it about you that makes you unique? And it's not a question of like, is there something? There is, I promise. Every single one of us has something brilliant to offer, but it's about like uncovering and unpacking and figuring out, what is that thing that I bring that no one else can? And I talk about the zone of brilliance, and it's really this blend of our skill set, our lived experience, the things that bring us pleasure and joy, and then our bigger vision for what we want to see in the world. And all of these pieces come together to create like a really unique voice and a really unique message. And that's the place where I want to see people building their businesses from. Not this like story of like someone else said that this is what I need to do to make money, or someone else said that I need to be, a 10K month manifestation coach. Not that there's anything wrong with manifesting 10K months. I'm all here for that. And like, what is it that you bring? Because that's the thing that's going to make your business sustainable. That's the thing that's going to make you feel excited to show up to your work every day, rather than feeling like you have to fit into someone else's mold.
This is the kind of message we're not getting anywhere. right? Especially, like, I'll refer to me, like, I've been in this business now for 9 years. And the first 5 years or so, first of all, it was people identify as men teaching me, and they were teaching me what I call bro marketing. And there was nothing else out there. So hearing you say those things, that's why I was saying I'm avidly consuming your content, is the thing that we don't hear about. And by default, we're building, in my case, a business that does not meet me. Right. And so for me, I've been in a rebuilding process for the last 2 years of creating business that is a feminist business that meets me and my client and allows everyone to thrive. So to the people who have an existing business like me for a number of years, like, when we realize that there is something else, how do we adapt? Like, what does that look like?
Well, I want to say, I wasn't always, my background is actually in feminist ethics, my undergrad degree. And also when I started my coaching business, that was not the thing, like Kelly Deals was doing her jam and there were other feminist folks out there, but I hadn't found them yet. And I started off as a moon coach. I was helping people bring their businesses and their lives into a cycle with the moon. And there was a lot of new age BS out there. And so there was a point where I realized, like, whoa, not only am I out of alignment with my own values, but I'm also like, I have a lot to learn. And so I want to normalize this awareness that we've been doing things outside of our own integrity. I want to normalize this conversation of like, oh, oops, that actually doesn't feel good to me. And I've been doing it for 5 or 10 years and I didn't realize, because it's so normal to like be a sleazy business owner. Like, I'm not saying that you are, or that any of us are like inherently sleazy, right? But that's just normal. And so I want to just acknowledge that if you have come to this place of realizing that there are pieces of your business that don't feel good, or that like maybe you've been called out as being problematic or as having caused harm, if that's the case, you don't have to burn your whole business down. Some people are like that. Some people like to burn everything down. And if that's your vibe, go for it. And also, you don't have to. Even as someone who has been practicing a feminist business for the last probably 3 years, like very strict, like very like consistently and committed to my feminist practice in my business, there are still things that I look back on. I'm like, oh, dang, I can't believe I said that. Or like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, that way. I'm still learning. And so business is an iterative process. And so if you're like realizing like, oh, my whole business is built on the Tony Robbins model and I want to change it, my advice or my suggestion would be to like take it one step at a time. Find one thing that feels not good and figure out what would feel better, and get some support. Like, I think that sometimes we feel shame around having done things in a way that we don't want to do them anymore. And so we want to keep it a secret and we want to like change it up so that we can just pretend that those things never happened. And I think that it's like all the better if we make it sort of public. If we're like, dang, I didn't realize that this thing I was doing was so horrible. And I didn't realize that like it was causing harm and I want to do better. And so I've hired this DEI consultant, or, I'm working with a feminist coach, or I'm doing my own healing practice to unlearn, anti-fat bias, right? I think talking about those things, it like raises it to the surface. And for so long, these problems have just been like sort of pushed to the side because it's more convenient or more profitable to like do it the way that it's always been done.
Or even to look perfect, right? Oh. So for an experienced person like me leading others, we have this, and I had this image from the people that I looked up to, they have it all figured out and they're not allowed to like learn as they go. that's also, well, we'll call it as that. It's a mindset of white supremacy, right? We will have another podcast about that, the white supremacy culture and the grind culture. But you know what? I'm learning as I go. Like I just said, this is all new and I'm changing the way we're doing business. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
leadership.
Absolutely. And I think, as someone who spent much of my life really struggling and hyper focused on presenting perfectly.
Yes.
For a while, I used to say imperfection is my new religion. I am just committed to showing up imperfectly. I am committed to making mistakes because that's where I'm going to learn. That's where I'm going to grow. If I'm like committed in my mind that everything I'm doing is perfect, then there's no room for learning. There's no room for growth because I'm already doing everything right. And like, so boring. Perfection is so boring and it's so limiting. Perfection is, and this idea that we need to be perfect keeps us from doing the work that we're here to do, because we came here, and this is like maybe a little existential, but we came here because we have something to learn and because we have something to teach. And both of those things require us to grow at least a little bit to do.
At every stage of life, right? Yeah. So for those of us or those of the people listening who haven't yet established business for long term, right? They're like starting up or want to start a business. So that group of people, what would be like the roadmap or the 1, 2, 3 steps that they could get started with?
So I work a lot with folks who are kind of at the early stages of their business. I really love that phase because it's like we talked about, it's a lot easier to start from scratch and do things, in a feminist way than to like roll everything back and restart. So I'm going to go back to this, like finding your zone of brilliance, right? Really figuring out what is it that you do and why are you the one to do this work for the people that you want to work with. People talk about like niching down, yes. And I don't really go there. I think that's, the concept is important. And for a lot of folks who are multi-passionate or who maybe are, have neurodivergence or something, this idea of like niching down can feel very constricting. But what I would say is get really clear on who you are, who you want to be, and the kind of world that you want to create, right? And then figure out what is the pie slice, right? We've got this big vision, and I always have to remind my clients this, right? We've got a lot of the folks I work with have a really big vision for the kind of world that they want to live in. And I have to remind myself and others, just because we have a really big vision doesn't mean that we are solely responsible for bringing that whole vision to life, right? There's this huge vision. My work is just a little pie slice. And so I think when we're starting a business, right, get clear on the big picture and then figure out what is your pie slice. Adrienne Marie Brown says, what is your inch wide, mile deep space? And that's going to be like my takeaway, I think, for folks is like, don't worry about the trends. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Focus on what you're here to do and take the time to move slowly. I think that there's an urgency, right? Which is part of capitalism and part of the system that we live in is like, we got to go quick. We got to make more money now. And it takes a lot of energy to backpedal. And so like, let's be really deliberate and really discerning with the way that we decide to grow our businesses. And remember that for those of us who are planning or just because that's what's available to us, we're doing it on our own or with a very small team. I love what you said about we have to create a business that's going to meet me. And so moving slowly, moving iteratively and letting it emerge rather than building some grand plan and sticking to it and then realizing like, ugh, this sucks. Give yourself the space and give your business the space to emerge in a way that feels pleasurable and exciting. Yeah, the sort of urgency, come back to that zone of brilliance. But that urgency, while I understand that capitalism, that the systems that we live in have put us in a place to feel urgent, right? Like that's a very real experience. And it doesn't make a lot of space for us to make really healthy decisions for ourselves and for our businesses. And so anytime I sense myself feeling urgent or feeling like I have to rush, I have to like question, like, where is that rushing feeling coming from? And what can I do to like slow down even just a little bit?
Often it comes from when you're starting a business, the need to make money in the sense that you need to pay your rent and you need to feed yourself. And I often will recommend to people to have a side gig and stop putting so much pressure on the coaching business building, because it's going to cause problems.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I have people who come to me all the time who are like, I want to quit my job in 6 weeks. Can you help me build a business where I can replace my 6-figure income in the next 3 months? And my answer is, I'm not that coach.
Yeah, no.
I am not that coach. The pressure we feel to make money, especially in the early stages of our business, my advice to folks who are in those earlier stages is to like do what you can to release the pressure, right? So that you can move slowly, so that you can move one step at a time and really allow your business to become something that you love and become, we don't start our own businesses so that we can like work 60-hour work weeks, although sometimes we end up doing that. And like, wouldn't it be lovely if instead of building a business in a way that someone else said we were supposed to, and then realizing that doesn't work for me and having to sort of backpedal and redo and restructure, wouldn't it be lovely if we could just like take it one step at a time and grow something that feels really good and that actually serves us and serves our clients? And maybe it means a little bit slower growth, but it also means that your energy gets to, stay right here. Your energy gets to be yours and you get to pour it into work that you love rather than trying to fit into somebody else's mold.
Yeah. And I think that whole piece of shame is really important, because there's this concept that you should be able to start this business in 6 months and make 6-figure. And if you have a part-time job, it should be quote shameful. Or I'm coaching a social worker right now who wants to get into coaching online, and she made the decision to like going from people's home to take a lower paid position as a social worker, but it's going to allow her to work from home. She's going to save like 12 hours of commute time to then give her the space to build that business.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing that I want to highlight for folks who are just getting started online, and we know this, right? We know this intellectually, but like, I want to repeat it. And I want you to like, listen to me when I say this. What we see on social media, what we see online is a very curated reel of what actually is happening in people's businesses. And I don't think that it's necessarily anything wrong with that, right? Like, y'all don't want to see me doing my taxes on Instagram. Y'all don't want to see me like at my like team meeting on Instagram. That's not what my business is about. And it's easy to forget that there's a whole lot going on behind the scenes. And so if someone is trying to sell you a Cinderella story or a rags to riches pathway to success, it's probably not as good as it sounds. I always joke that if I had $100 for every time someone had said, I wish I could hire you, but I just invested all of this money in a coach who promised they could teach me how to do business, but their strategies were just so gross that I couldn't do it. And now I'm back at ground zero. If I had $100 for every time I'd heard that, I would have a lot of money.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, there's just a lot of gross practices that have just become so normal in the online business space. And what I would rather see folks do is take their time in figuring out what their business practices should look like. Take their time figuring out like who is the right coach or who is the right team member to hire, and just allow for a little bit of slowness. Even though I know that it feels like it has to happen now, I recognize that feeling and I feel you on it. And I just want to invite you to like see if you can dial that urgency back just a little bit. It will serve you in the long run.
And also building a sound business. Like I've run business for 25 years at different level. And I always come back to the place where like you got to build the base of your business, the structure of your business. And I think that's a feminist approach. I'm totally out in not my territory, but building something structurally sound will make it sustainable and will allow you to have more impact than if you're trying to like band-aid it so you can get up and running in 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think about the way that like nature works, right?
Yeah.
Like if left unbothered by human hands. I live in Oregon and we have a rainforest here. It's not the tropical rainforest that everyone's used to, but we have a rainforest here. And my husband and I sometimes go into the backwoods to go mushroom hunting. And when we go back there, you can just see these trees that have clearly been growing for hundreds of years. You can see that the moss and the pine needles and everything is working together. And it took thousands of years to get there, but it's just like perfect. And it's just doing its thing. And it doesn't feel rushed and it doesn't feel thrown together. And it is even a little bit messy and it's perfect. And so I think, I want to remind you that like, and when I say you, I'm talking to the folks who are listening, who are maybe just starting their businesses. It's okay to move slow. It's okay for things to feel messy. It's okay if you don't know if something's going to work, but you want to try it anyway. Like all of those things are allowed. But I would say like, doing what we can to release the urgency, release the shame about not being where we think we're supposed to be. Like all of that is not helping you build a successful business. Moving at a pace that, like you said, allows you to build the structures, allows you to make really discerning decisions, right? A lot of really choosing to move in a way that feels good and that serves you and your people. That's what we should be focusing on in the early stages of our business, not the like fanciest Instagram or like the pictures next to a jet or like all of that. Like some people are into that. Some people are not. I think that just like focusing on what your work is and that inch wide, mile deep work that is yours, focus on that. Find a structure that feels good and that like allows you to be who you are and give it time.
To grow. Right?
Give it time to grow.
So how can people learn from you? So obviously I'll push your Instagram account because that's where I met you. But what else do you have for people to connect with you and learn from you?
Mm-hmm. So I work with folks one-on-one. I have long-term one-on-one mentorships to help people sort of get their businesses up off the ground and get things rolling and to really like help them figure out what's their offer, what's their strategy. So that's one option. I also have a 12-month feminist business mentorship that is like a group container. And that is really going to give you all of the foundations that you need to start an online business. Or if you're like pivoting and you really want to infuse your feminist values into that, that's my Brilliance program. And then I just launched a short-term one-on-one coaching intensive that's all on Voxer. And it's really sort of a deep dive into one aspect of your business so that we can really infuse your vision and your values into either an offering or your messaging that you're putting out in the world. But I also send an email every week or almost every week. And I really love those. So that's another way that you can connect with me. And like you said, Stephanie, I love creating content on Instagram. So you can connect with me there too.
Yeah. I would recommend for everyone to go and follow you and get to know you and think about it as you. I'll make an illustration here, but we are serving mainly women who have been dieting their whole life. And all of a sudden, this random person shows up in their life and say, hey, you don't have to diet, actually. You could do the non-diet approach. You could do intuitive eating. You can actually love your big body. And then we take them on the road of explaining them what it is, and then they work with us. Think of your journey meeting Lauren, building a feminist business, as your client learning about the non-diet approach, right? And see, what I love is how you present your business is how we should also present the non-diet approach. So go through this journey. I think it's going to be very instructive for you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. This was awesome. I'm really grateful to have had this opportunity to chat with you and with your community. And I so look forward to diving in your next cohort.
Yeah, you're going to teach about body of work.
Yeah, about like taking this zone of brilliance and actually turning it into a body of work that is substantial and that you can build a business on. No more feeling like you gotta like create content out of nowhere. Like you'll have all these pieces that you need and you can just sort of like reshape and reshift and keep putting content out there that's really high value and totally relevant to the work that you're doing in the world.
Yeah, so we'll teach that to our students in the mentorship. But for those of you like, what the heck is a body of work? Go to my podcast, probably the last 150 episodes are built and created under this concept of body of work, where I'm like sharing pieces of content that are part of my body of work. So that'll give you kind of a teaser. And for the people who are going to join us, you'll get the whole step-by-step process.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
This was awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. And I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
We are very proud to announce the Undiet Your Coaching Practice Scholarship Program for self-identified fat and BIPOC people looking to grow their non-diet businesses. We acknowledge a gross underrepresentation of fat and BIPOC people in the non-diet industry, and we believe one of the primary key in making the non-diet approach accessible to all is by encouraging diversity in size, race, ethnicity, and culture among non-diet coaches and non-diet health and mental health practitioner and all non-diet business owner. So we are announcing 2 scholarships applicable to the next round of our non-diet mentorship program that will kick off in January 2022. Application for the scholarship will be accepted until October 30th, 2021. You can find the detail at www.stephaniedozier.com/scholarship or use the link in the show notes. And I'll see you on the other side. Ready to shed diet culture from your practice and help more clients do the same? Awesome. We've got free resources to get you started. Simply go to stephaniedozier.com/pro series, all in one word, and access our 3 free training classes that are currently available. We also have a free PDF guide to intuitive eating and article about the non-diet approach. We also offer a variety of paid programs throughout the year to support you in your journey to undiet your coaching practice. Join us at stephaniedozier.com/pro series, and I'll see you on the other side.